Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Vivian. Yes, I called my presentation maybe Roadmap to iBRoad, which is kind of doubling the roadmap to the roadmap. It has to be very clear, my presentation follows up from Vivian's presentation. So I will show you some items, and they might look similar like Vivian's items, but of course, this is a steps that follow each other. So this has to be very clear. So first, I would like you to imagine you are in charge to implement this tool in your member state, and first show you what the tools really look like. So this is the renovation roadmap. And you see, it's an on-site audit, so an auditor goes to the homes and he calculates the current building state. Based on that, he calculates renovation steps and shows them in detail, and also shows certain overviews of these renovation steps. So you see, maybe in your country, this might not fit for 100%, and there, of course, are things left that need to be adapted. And the other thing is the iBRoad logbook, which is mainly a data storage. And on the left, you see a small excerpt. It's really a large data storage. And once this is filled in, you can use this data for some assessments. For instance, showing the building performance or showing the envelope performance of the building in a non-technical way, so show it with colors, or also the equipment performance and how it evolves through the time. So this is what we want to do to really implement this. So we saw this slide in Vivian's presentation, and that were the steps for the feasibility study. So this comes first, and I would say it's more strategic approach. So really to see, would this fit in my member state? Is there a way to find financial aspects and support? And this is, my presentation follows after that. So given feasibility is there and we decided, yes, we want to implement iBRoad in our member state. So here are my steps. And you might think, okay, they look a bit similar to the other ones. And of course they do, because the issues are very similar. But of course the content is something else. So of course first we start with a very concrete action plan. Of course have stakeholders in this process, the concrete implementation of the tool and policy framework, then the physical rollout of the whole thing, and afterwards monitoring, evaluation, and further development. And we will dive deeper to these items now. So the action plan really has to define what exactly is the need for action, what exactly are the targets and priorities, how can they be reached, when, by whom, and how to finance exactly. So you see, this looks a bit similar to the first presentation, but if you think of it, it's very, very concrete then. The plan that's shown here is just an example that might look differently for every member state. So yes, but you see, it's really a plan in time and actions. The stakeholder consultation is extremely important through this process. I had the chance to attend the implementation in Germany of our tool, the renovation roadmap, and we had a lot of these dialogues with specialists who are afraid sometimes of or see opportunities or like to take advantage of these tools. we had these focus group interviews where you literally sit behind the mirror and you have homeowners who want to plan renovations in that room. And also, of course, we had workshops, great workshops with all relevant associations. And yes, of course, you need to adjust the process through this communication. You need to adapt the products, but you also need to gain support for this tool. And the more stakeholders support you, the better it will work in the whole implementation. The tool implementation itself, of course, is kind of technical. So you have to decide the domain for the tools. They are online tools, and you need a decision where will it be. You have to decide for the data management, the storage location. The translation of the tools, they are prepared. They can be translated very easily, but you have to care for that. The national labels, maybe for building efficiency, they might look differently. So, of course, they have to be adapted in the tools, not to confuse building owners. Maybe you have labels for building components or for technology. The building codes maybe themselves have different thresholds, so they need to be adapted. So if a building in the EPC is class C, for example, it needs to be class C in the logbook as well. So the data sets in the logbook, so what are the indicators that are stored? This needs to be adapted because I think many countries have very, very similar calculation standards for buildings, for the EPC, but there are differences. And in this small example picture, you see white fields, they are valid for all member states throughout the European Union, but the blue fields, they are adapted to single member states. And you see that there are many blue fields. So in order to be real added value for one country, you need the small adaptations. You need maybe adaptations to the calculation software that is used in a country, and in order to be able to use the interface, so there can be a data exchange between the calculation software that is already there and the new iBRoad. And of course, the tools, the adapted tools, they should be field tested, so you really know that they're working. The policy framework itself is very, very important. We have a whole complete report about supportive policy framework. Here are just some parts of this. So one thing is what really needs to be there, what are prerequisites for the implementation. So of course we need software tools to calculate building energy demand. This is usually what is used for the EPC. But beyond that, we need to calculate renovation costs. In some member states, this is already there. In others, you need a certain approach. Of course, you need trusted and trained energy auditors, renovation experts. The authorities that administer the roadmap, and they really have to care for that and have financing for that. And they have to also to care about the auditor training. Ideally, an already existing program can be used, an energy audit program. So if there's none, the roadmap might be used to kick off such an audit program, because as we saw in Vivian's presentation, people are really interested in this kind of audit in the iBRoad, but the willingness to pay is rather low. The policy framework implementation can be generally be carried out in 3 ways. So, of course, on the one hand, you have this whole audit and consultancy way where you can say, okay, I can support quality networks, renovation quality. I can implement the iBRoad within the EPC and make an advanced EPC, just like Portugal did. You can have campaigns and audit schemes. You can make it in a really regulatory way, so have, for instance, mandatory roadmaps, which is something, yes, you have to decide. If a roadmap is mandatory, you always have the threat that it's rejected by homeowners, because if something is mandatory, yes, you produce some rejection of this. You can have it combined with obligations, so maybe that's a better way. So if there are obligations anyway to use renewable energies or efficiency, then the roadmap helps the homeowner to fulfill these obligations. In an economic way, of course, funding schemes are extremely helpful. They don't exactly need to be funding schemes only for audits. You could also connect this to taxes, maybe to property taxes or inheritance taxes. So people pay less tax maybe if they have a roadmap. So the real rollout then is really to say, okay, I have to bring this framework, this policy framework into force. I need to communicate via trusted channels. So in Germany, it was the Department of Economy who managed the whole communication, and this is really trusted. You have to manage this deployment of software. Of course, iBRoad is an online tool, but maybe the other software needs deployment. We have this training material. Of course, auditors need to be trained. We have a lot of training material there. On the other hand, you need these face-to-face seminars. And of course, you have to organize this software support. And after a certain time of experience with the tool, monitoring and evaluation is really crucial. Of course, objectives are check these experiences, the effectiveness of the tools, and identify potential for improvements. We did this for the German scheme for audits, and we made service among auditors, among the homeowners, and among control groups. And as a result, you saw, of course, the number of audits that were carried out anyway, the program cost, and this indicator, CO2 savings per euro. And yes, of course, this is extremely helpful to develop the tool further, which is the last slide, where you see, okay, of course, we need to develop the software tools themselves, and we already did after the iBRoad field test. But you also can develop the funding schemes, the regulations themselves, the management of the audits, and the marketing or communication. And it's, yes, always this circle of improvement and implementing the tools. So thank you for listening. I think, Alexander, you will manage questions that might be there already. So thanks a lot.